So this video is going to give an overview of the studio mixing desks and the function of the panel. Within this studio you'll see a few types of different equipments that produce audio sound which can be broadcast to our audience, such as the microphones, CD players over here, the computer, and the telephone. So essentially the role of the panel here is to capture all the different sounds the equipment produces and can be mixed in a way to produce our radio programs. So I'll briefly explain how to operate each channel and point out the other useful buttons on the panel. So across the whole panel, we've got a number of different channels which correspond to a different piece of equipment. So whilst each of them operates a different piece of equipment, the layout of the buttons are quite similar. So first of all, on the very left of the panel, we've got this section here. They're all for our microphones. So you'll see that they're labeled, all the labels are down here on the bottom screens. So here we've got main, standing for the main mic, then microphone 1, microphone 2, and etc. So within the new studios, you'll notice that each of the microphones, they've been labeled. So for example, this one, it's got labeled mic 1. So this one will correspond to over here, labeled mic 1. Whereas this one here, this microphone is our main mic in the studio. So that one will correspond to this channel, which is labeled main for the main microphone. And over here we've got our CD players, so CD1, CD2, CD3, and followed by PC. So PC is for the computer, and the CD players here all correspond to the 3 CD players on this box. So we've got CD1, CD2, and this one is CD3, which is, and then the PC, you can operate using the keyboard and mouse here, and anything that you use on the computer will show up on the display screens, and you can play audio using this channel. Next, we've got our auto channel. So auto stands for the automated music on the studio. So basically, when programs aren't being broadcasted live from the studios, the station broadcasts this auto music from here, where we schedule station announcements, sponsorships as well as a collection of music from all the broadcasters. The next one to note is telephone. So satellite, we have it here, which is a satellite program, but we don't really use it. Next one is telephone. So if we get incoming callers or guests who'd like to speak on our radio show, they can call and we can put them through air using this channel. Next one is the aux. So this is our Bluetooth function, but I'll go into details later. So for our example here, we're gonna use the auto as an example, using the auto channel here as an example for how to use all the buttons along this strip. Okay? So for each piece of equipment, they all have a corresponding strip of buttons relating to it. So for example, main microphone here, the main mic, you can operate it using all of these buttons here. These buttons relate to the main mic. All right. So for now, we're going to use these buttons here that relate to auto. So the main things to take notice is here, we've got the fader strip. So this one controls the volume that the audience hears. So if you slide it up, it increases the volume, and if you slide it down, it decreases the volume. That's what we have to monitor during the show. The other 2 buttons here is on and off. So if we switch it on, that means we're recording this, or the sound will now come into the panel. So for example, if I press on, the sound is now coming into the panel. However, our volume is down at the very bottom, which is why we cannot hear it. So if we fade it up, so now we're able to listen to the music coming from auto, right? As soon as we turn it off though, it cuts the music off. See? Now the music has stopped. So while we turn it on, we can control the volume using the fader panel over here. And it's important to note that while you broadcast, it's important to take a look on the top right-hand side of the panel. So up here, we've got the level monitors. So this monitors the sound levels of anything that comes out of the panel. So you'll notice that right now, the sound levels go up and down, corresponding to the music that's being played. And if it's too loud, it will actually be red. So if I fade our music slightly upwards, so now we notice, you see how that it goes into the red zone, which means it's too loud for our audience. So while we mix our audio and produce our show on the panel, especially for the panel operators, it's very important to monitor up here. To keep an eye out on the sound level monitors and make sure that it's not too loud and it's not too soft either. So because it's too loud, we'll now fade our sound fader down a little bit. So this way it's at an appropriate sound level now. A good tip, however, is that most of the channels on the panel, the default is around 0. So you'll see that the fader strip has numbers. So if you fade it up to about 0, that should be an appropriate level for the sound level monitor. So now we've explained the two on and off buttons, the fader strip, the sound level monitor. Next one is up here. There's a few buttons up here at the top. The main thing to take notice is of the Q button. The other buttons are there, but you don't need to use them. So if you press them, see, nothing happens. However, though, if you press the access button, it actually changes the display. These are some extra functions, but we don't need to worry about them. So if you do accidentally hit it, don't panic. Just press access again, it goes back to normal. So the next function that we want to talk about is Q. So you'll notice that on top of each channel, they all have a Q button. So each of them have a Q function. So this Q is on top of auto. So what it does is if I press Q, it starts flashing, the button starts flashing red, which means that basically the Q function is used for us to preview listen the audio to ensure that it's the correct song, to monitor the sound levels, and just basically to check everything is correct before we put it on live to the audience. And so the way to monitor it is if it's on Q, the sound level monitors now are on the right side. So previously when we switched it directly on air, the sound levels were on the left monitor, but now it will be on the right while it's on Q, while it's flashing Q. So that's the two differences. So the right side is the Q monitor, and the left side is what's actually being played to the audience, and that's what monitors it. And so if you're happy with what we're tested, so using Q, we can preview listen our audio. If it's good, then we can actually directly go on air. So we can press on the on button, see? And now it will switch the sound level monitors from this side to this side. And so the next, those are the main buttons for each channel. We've got our on, off, sound fader, and Q button. And then while you operate each channel, it's important to take note of the sound level monitor. And if you use the Q function, you monitor it through the right-hand level monitors. Okay, so you'll see that each of the strips on the panel, they all have the same buttons and they're operated in pretty much the same way. So next we'll talk about the buttons on the very side, on the very right-hand side. So you'll see that there's a label here called monitors and a label for headphones. So what this is here, this dial controls the volume of the speakers in the studio. So if I turn it up, this actually controls the volume of the speakers within the studio. So that one and that one. It doesn't actually affect what the audience hears at all. It only affects what we hear in the studio. So you'll notice that if I turn this to the very lowest level, we now can't hear it in the studio. However, the sound level monitor is still working properly. That's only because this controls what we hear in the studio. So I'll put it back to normal. The next one beside it is the headphone jack. So the headphone dial. So this one is the headphones for the main operator, for the panel presenter, main presenter, or the panel operator, the one who sits behind the desk. So we're currently in Studio 3, and the headphone jack for this headphone is actually located underneath the desk right here. So you'll see that there's a like a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, and then the larger one as well. So you can use either headphone types, and they both work. And you can control your own headphone volumes using this dial here. So that's how you control the volume for your own headphones, as well as the volume in the speaker. Going back to the studio speakers here, it's important to note these two buttons. You've got a PGM button and an off-air monitor. So these two are quite important. So this PGM button, it stands for program. So if this is on, or if it's highlighted blue, what it means is that the speakers here in the studio are currently playing what's happening on the panel. So for example, if I play auto now, that's what's coming through the speakers. If I put on a CD, or if I put on something from the computer, that's what will be playing through the current speakers here. However, if I switch it to off-air monitor, the one right above here, what that does is it plays whatever the audience is hearing. So if I switch it over, you'll see that now this one is lighted up blue. So that means it's now playing the exact same thing the audience is listening to if they tune into FM 91.1. So that's the difference between these two. And the main use of using off-air monitor is to check if your program is airing correctly, just to make sure that it's connected, everything's going as it is supposed to be. But make sure you don't broadcast while this light is on. If you do broadcast when the light is on, it creates an echo sound, and it distorts your voice a little bit. So make sure just to use this to check, just to safety check that you're broadcasting, and then switch back to PGM to continue your program. Yep. And then the other functions on this panel here, on this right side, is there's an intercom system. So when the studios have all been upgraded, we can actually talk to the other two studios using the intercom. So if I hold down Studio 2 button, if I hold this down, I'll actually be able to talk directly into the main microphone, and the people in Studio 2 will be able to hear me. If I let go, they won't be able to hear. And the indicator is like, if it's red, it means they'll be able to hear me. If it's not, then they won't be able to. So to use it, you have to press and hold it down. The other important thing is to note how to switch the studio on or take over between studios. So this is explained in the previous video, but we'll go over it again. So basically, to turn this studio on air, you have to use this button here, which is to air. You have to press and hold it down, and then click on the ST3 button because we're in Studio 3. ST3 stands for Studio 3. You press that one, and then that one, once both of the lights are flashing red, it means that this studio is now broadcasting to the audience. And once you're finished with your program, you can switch the studio off by switching it to music, which is our automated channel filled with like station IDs, announcements, and all that. So we press and hold the to air button, and then click music over here. And just like that, once music is red, it means the audience is now just listening to that, and now this studio here is turned off the air. So this video here, we just quickly described basically all the functions, or what each channel is on the panel, how to operate them. We use the auto function here as a demonstration. However, all the main buttons here, the on, off, sound fader, and the Q button, these are the same across the whole panel, right? So you'll see each of the channels have on and off and a fader and a Q button on the top bottom left. And whenever you turn an audio source on or using Q, you can monitor it over here. So this monitors it if it's switched on, and then the level monitor over here monitors it if it's on Q. Finally, we talked about how to adjust your volume in the studio. This adjusts volume in the studio. How to monitor the stuff that's going live to air. But you have to make sure you broadcast using this one. Make sure this one is blue while you do your broadcast. This dial here controls the main operator's headphones volume. You've got an intercom system to talk between the studios, which can be used just to check, if I'm ready to go to air, if they're ready to switch over the programs. And then lastly, we talked about the studio switching procedure, which is how to turn your studio to air, which is basically you have to press and hold this button here, and then either press on Studio 3, that will turn the studio to air, or when you're finished, you press and hold this button and click on music. So hopefully this makes it it's a good introduction to what the panel is, and what the operations or what the functions are for each of the many buttons on the panel. Please leave a question, or you can email us at the office if there's any other questions and you'd like more explanation, and we'll make more videos to follow up on this as well.